We are on Mem Beis Amad Beis on the bottom. 42. 40. No, on the bottom. 42b, the other page.
Oh, yeah.
On the bottom.
You're right.
Ibayalahu. Of course I'm right. Come on. Ibayalahu. Evet shemachro rabo lekenas machor o eno machor. So you have a adon who sells not the Eved, but he sells the ability of the Eved, the potential knas that he would collect for the Eved if the Eved would be killed. We said again, if an Eved is killed, so then the Adon gets 30 kesef, and if it's not an Eved and he's killed by a shor, it's a regular Stam Zayid, then he gets kofer, which we said either means his value or the value of the guy who owns a shor.
One of them.
So if we're right, one of them. So the question is, let's say the Rabbo sold the potential. So I go over to you and say, listen, I have an Eved, there's a chance, there's always a chance he's going to get run over by a shor. And Lamaisa, how much are you willing to pay me for the right to collect the 30 should he be run over by a shor and killed? So a machar and a machar. Can you sell the potential collection rights of a knas that it would be so? So what's the shaila? The shaila is, can you be makna davar shelo b'olam or not? Can you buy something? Can you sell something that's not yet in this world? The knas is not yet in this world because he hasn't got hit by a car yet. He hasn't got run over by a shore yet. But Lamaisa, there's always a potential. So can you sell the potential? Says the Gemara. Tiboiler Meir, Tiboiler Rabbanan. Tiboiler Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir holds what? Rabbi Meir holds Adam Makna Davar Shelo B'Olam. You can sell something not yet in this world. Therefore, you could sell the fruits of a tree that are not yet here. So what's the problem? So why would you not be able to sell over here the rights to the Eved? Maybe Rabbi Meir holds, says the Gemara, you can only sell something that's going to come. We know that every year the tree has fruits, different amount of fruits every year, but Lamaisa, the tree has fruits every year. So if you know something's coming, you could sell the potential for something that's definitely going to come. How do we know that Lamaisa, the guy is going to be gored? You can't, there's only a possibility that he's going to be gored, probably a small possibility. I mean, we all know people who are more likely to be gored than others. We all know those people that, like, when you hear something happen, I'm not surprised to that guy and not to this guy. There's some guys that have more mazel than others. But Lamaisa, even for this guy who has less mazel, the chances of him being gored are not too high. And even if you're going to say that he is a chance that he's going to get gored, even if he's gored, the guy still has a way out. If the Baal of the shore comes and he admits to what happened before the Eidim come to Beis, then he's off the hook. So there's a very, 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 very small possibility the guy's going to not only get gored, but that the owner's going to have to pay for the goring. So Lamaisa, you can't sell something that has a very small possibility. When I say that's something which has a nice possibility and a very common, not just possible, but it's going to happen every year. Okay, there might be a fluke and the payros don't come, but more often than not, the payros will come, and therefore you can sell them. So what's the shayla according to Rabbanan who say Adam ain't makna davar shelo b'olam? So why in this case would you think you could sell it? You can't sell payros deka which are not here now. Very interesting svara. But Lamaisa, the shore is in this world. And it's interesting that how does he know that? How do you know the shore wasn't born yet? But okay, he's assuming the shore is in this world. So the shore is in this world. The guy's in this world. They just haven't met yet. So Lamaisa, since both of them are in this world, just the meeting of the two, the shore has not yet gone and injured the guy. So Lamaisa, since the actual items are in this world, you can sell the items. So it's interesting, it gives you a svara both ways, how even if you would say Adamakna, over here you should say Ein Adamakna, and even if you say Ein Adamakna Davar Shelo B'Olam, in this case you could say Adamakna Davar.
That professor, certainly the actuaries would say he had more of a possibility of being gored. I mean, for you and I to be gored by an ox, not so likely, but if that's every day you go out and work with oxen.
In Achanami, yeah. But he's saying that even in that case, the chances of being gored to death by an ox, it's not just getting gored, it's being gored to death. You're selling the rights to the 30 shekel or the $30 if you're gored to death.
Right.
It's not a matter of just being gored. Says the Gemara. Amar Mai. So what's the din? Can you or can you not sell the future possibility of your Eved being killed? Can I sell that potential $30 or 30 kesef to somebody else before it happens? Amar Biaba. Tashma. It says in the Brisa, V'yilid bias. It says that when a Kohen buys an Eved, so he's Kinyan Kaspo, and the Kinyan Kaspo hu Yochalbo. When you buy an Eved, so if you're a Kohen, the Eved can eat the Truma. Not only that, v'yilid beiso heim yochlu belachmo. His children can also eat. That means not only can he eat, so we said a Kohen can eat, and the kids of a Kohen can eat, and the Eved of a Kohen can eat, and the Eved's kids can eat as well. So why does it say v'yilid bayis? Matam lomar im kinyan kesav ochel yilid bayis lo koshkin. It's obvious that if he can eat, that his kids can eat as well. Ilu kena yisi omer ma kinyan kesav sheyesh bo shava kesav ochel. Af yilid bayis sheyesh bo shava kesav ochel. Uminayin shal pi sheino shava klum. He's saying no. Tam lomar yilid bayis mikol makom. So why do you need both to tell me the father and the kids? The kids, it tells me that even if the kid is not worth a shava pruta, a shava kesav, he could still eat. V'adayin ani omer yilid bayis bein sheyesh bo shava kesav bein shein bo shava kesav ochel kinyan kesav yesh bo shava kesav ochel ein bo shava kesav ein ochel. Tam lomar kinyan kaspo v'yilid beiso ma yilid bayis af pisheino shava klum ochel af kinyan kaspo af pisheino shava klum ochel. What's the Gemara saying? Well, the Gemara is saying that it needs to tell me both kinyan kaspo and yilid beiso. Why? To teach both things. Because if you only had one, you would only learn one, and maybe you'd learn the other one, but you wouldn't learn necessarily shava pruta. So what do you learn? That baying the person, baying the kids, whether they're shaver pruta, they're worth the pruta, or even if they're not worth the pruta, they could still eat. We're going to see in a second, how can you have a person that's not worth the pruta? Says the Gemara, what's the proof from here? Again, what are we trying to choose? We're trying to answer our question whether you could sell the future potential payment knas you're going to get if your Eved is gored, if your Eved is gored to death. And if you think that an Eved can be sold, not the Eved himself, but the knas potential of an Eved can be sold. Very interesting. So what's the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying that we need a special pasuk, we need both parts of the pasuk to teach us that even if you have an Eved, or even if you have the kid of an Eved who's worthless, worth nothing, they still can eat truma. Says the Gemara, how is it possible to have an Eved that's worthless? If you're telling me, if you held that you can sell the future potential of knas, then by definition no Eved is worthless. Because even if you're worthless, you're still worth something because there's somebody out there that's going to buy the possibility that you're going to be gored to death and that they're going to collect $30. So even if you're worthless as a worker, even if you're worthless and all you do is eat food all day, at the end of the day, lemaisa, you're worth something. So how can the Gemara suggest that there's a case where there's an Eved or a kid that's worthless? It must be what? It must be that you can, it must be, one second, it must be that you cannot sell it. Because if you could sell it, then there would be no such thing as a worthless thing. Therefore, it must be that you cannot sell the future possibility of a knas. Says the Gemara, no, in Ika Evet Treifa. There's a case of an Eved Treifa who's about to die, and that Eved would be worthless. Why would that Eved be worthless? Because the halacha is that if you have a Treifa that's about to die, if an animal gores to death a Treifa, you don't collect the money. Because since he's going to die anyway, so there's no 30 payment. Says Gemara, v'hachazi l'meikam kamei. Yeah, but Lamaisa, even though there's no class, the guy is still worth something. How can you possibly have a case that he's worthless? Says the Gemara, if he's disgusting, if he's filled with boils. So if you have a guy who is a treifa and a menuval umukashchin, then in fact you can have somebody that is totally worthless. The fact that he's a treifa makes him worthless al kanas, and the fact that he's a mukashchin or a menuval makes him worthless out his actual physical worth. But at the end of the day, we don't have an answer whether you can sell the knas or not, the future knas or not. So remember, we said yesterday that if you're half Eved, half Ben Chorin, so the other half needs to free you, right? The Eved half needs to free you. The owner of the Eved needs to free you. But Lamaisa, until he frees you, so what's your status? So we said you can't go ahead and marry. We don't say that on Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday you can marry a free girl, and on Monday, Wednesday, Friday you can marry a shifcha. We said by Yisurin we don't say that. So let's say Lamaisa, you go ahead and you're half Eved, half Ben Chorin, and you can't marry anybody really. But let's say you go ahead and you're Mekadesh Bas Chorin. You're Mekadesh, a regular Jew. Mahu, what's the din? So imtim salomar ben Yisrael sha'amar labas Yisrael iskachi lechatzoi mikudesha. So we'll prove it from another case. There's a case where I go over to a woman and I say, will you marry half of me? Okay, will you marry half of me? Which half? The top half or the bottom half? No, will you marry half of me? So in that case, well, it depends if we say mikudeshes or not. Well, if you hold that if you marry half of a girl, then you're considered to be mikudeshes, then what? Then you seemingly would hold over here that if he's half free and half Eved, that he can marry, or he can be mikudash to a free woman. Says the Gemara, "Dechazi l'kulei ha lo chazi l'kulei." No, you can't prove anything from the case where he goes out and only marries half her, because even if you say that if he marries half of a regular girl, it works, that's only because he has the ability to marry the other half. He just chose to marry half. But over here, where you don't have the ability to marry the other half, why? Because the other half is an eved, so in that case, the kedushin would not be chal. V'imtim tzalom are the opposite. Ben Yisrael ha'mekadesh chatzi isha eina mikudeshes, and if you say that in the case of a Yisrael who marries half of a woman, so the kedushin is not chal. So what do you say? You'll say over there it's not chal, but maybe over here it should be chal. Why? D'shayir bekinyana v'ha'eved lo shayir bekinyana. Because when you marry half of a woman, you had the ability to marry the whole woman, and you chose not to. So since you choose not to, we're going to say eina mikudeshes. But over here you did everything you could. What do you want from me? I could only marry half of her. Only half of her is free. Therefore, if you did everything you should have done, you're going to be mikudesh. So those are the two tzadim to say you should or shouldn't be. Again, the Gemara says mai. So bottom line, what's the difference? Bottom line, what's the halacha? If I marry somebody that's half eved and half free, and I'm free, so what's the halacha? Am I married or not? Hemis mishachatzu eved v'chatzu ben chorin notzin chatzi knas rabba v'chatzi kofer liyorshav. So the Gemara brings a proof from a case we had yesterday. If you kill a person who's half eved, half ben chorin, like the case we're talking about here, except here you're marrying the person, notin chatzi knas rabba, so the rabba gets chatzi knas, and the kofer goes to the Yorshim, because again you killed him, and now his Yorshim get to collect the kofer payment. V'yomar kedusha v'lav kedushin. If you say that a half eved, half ben chorin can't get married, Yorshim minale, how does he have Yorshim? So I didn't understand this question, because why couldn't he have Yorshim before? It's not that the Gemara is learning that if you have Yorshim before and then you become a chatzi eved, chatzi ben chorin, that you don't have Yorshim anymore. So the Gemara seems to be saying that if you have Yorshim when you're chatzi eved, chatzi ben chorin, and you get killed, so your Yorshim collect the half that was ben chorin, your Yorshim collected, it must be what? That as a chatzi eved, chatzi ben chorin, you can get married, and you must have had yorshin from the chatzi eved, chatzi ben chorin thing.
Why do they have to be married? You could have illicit relations and still have a child.
Before becoming an eved.
So seemingly the Gemara is learning that. So I said before he became an eved, the Gemara doesn't seem to be learning like that. That they would no longer be yorshin. And it seems like if you had illicit relations, the Gemara is saying that you would not be yoresh them. No. I don't think that's halach in general. The Gemara here is assuming. The Gemara is assuming that you would not be yoresh. So by definition, the Gemara is saying that it must be if he has yorshin. So it must be that the kedushin is chal when you marry a chatzi eved, chatzi ben chorin. Says the Gemara, Amar Avad bar Ava kishe'asau treifa. No. The case is where you made him a treifa. Umay yorshav nafshe. No. Hemis mishachatzi eved, chatzi ben chorin doesn't mean you actually killed him. You made him a treifa. So if you made him a treifa, now he's basically on death. He's on death row. So what happens? So since he's worthless now, so his Rabbo gets the payment, and he himself gets it. When it says Yorshav, what does it mean? He means himself. He gets the payment because he's still alive, so he gets the payment. The Gemara says, Amar Rava shteichu v'zadavar. I have two problems with that. First of all, Chada de Yorshav Gitani. It says Yorshav, not him. Ve'od koferhu. Second of all, it's a kofer. V'amar yishagish kofer mishtalam el achar misa. How can it be that his Adon will get the kofer payment if Lamaisa? How can it be that that he himself will get the kofer payment? You only get the kofer payment if you die. Even if you're a treifa, you don't get the kofer payment. Ella marava. What does it mean? Roy lito ve'enlo. No, it means the guy actually died. So if he's half eved, half ben chorin, and he dies, so don't you have a proof here that if you're giving it to the Yorshim? No, it doesn't mean that the Yorshim get it. It means that the Yorshim should have gotten it. Chaval, in this case, the guy has no Yorshim, but it doesn't mean Yorshav. It says Yorshim minale. The Gemara says, you're right, he doesn't have any Yorshim, because he can't have Yorshim, because maybe you can argue that he can't get Mikudash. What does it say, Yorshim? It says Yorshim, because the Maisa, it's telling us that if he had Yorshim, so then they would collect it. Unfortunately for this guy, he has no Yorshim, and therefore he's dead, there's nobody to collect it, and the owner of the shore will just have to pay to the Rabbo, but will not have to pay to this guy. Amar Rava. Kishem shamekadesh chatzi isha ena mikudeshes, kach chatzi yashivcha v'chatzi bas chorin sheniskat she'en kiddusha kiddushin. So says Rava, if just like the Rava seems to be paskening, again we didn't bring any proofs, but Rava seems to be paskening that you can marry half of a woman. Why? So you cannot marry half of a woman if you're mekadesh half of a woman. It's not mekudash. Darash Rabba bar Rafuna kshem mekadesh chatzi isha ina mekudeshes kachatzi shiv chatzi beschorin sheniskacha ina mekudeshes. So they both hold ina mekudeshes. What does Rav Chisda say? Rav Chisda is going to say what we said before. I'm like Rav Chisda, me dummy. How can you bring a proof that just because you marry half of a woman, it's not mikudeshes. Why does that mean by definition? If you marry half woman, if you marry half free, half eved, so it's not going to be mikudeshes. Like we said before, maybe the cases are different. Hasam shayir bekinyano, hachalo shayir bekinyano. Maybe over there the reason when you marry half of a woman that doesn't work is because you left the other half hanging. But over here where you can only marry half, because only half is baschorin, maybe in a chanami, that kedushin would be chal. Rabbi heard this, and he was retracted. Hadar Okim Rabba Barafuna Mora Allah Vidarish, he appointed him a Turkman and said, I messed up. There was a stumbling block. You're right. I made a mistake by comparing the two cases. I still hold that if you marry half a woman, you're not mekudash. Why? Because the cases are not similar. Because one of them was shayir bekinyano, one was lo shayir bekinyano. My time hasam b'shayir bekinyano, hachalo shayir bekinyano. The greatness of somebody like that who can admit their mistakes. And therefore he says, you're right, we can't compare the two cases. And even though when you marry half of a woman, it won't be chal. When you, a free man, marry a woman who's half eved, half free, so it is chal because you did everything in your power. You can only marry the half free part of her, and you did. Amar of Sheshes. Kashem shamekadish chatz isha ina mikudeshes. Kach chatz yeshivcha v'chatz baschon sheniskacha ein kedusha kedushin. So again, he doesn't seem to hold to this idea of shayir kinyano hachalo shayir kinyano. V'im lechoshcha adam lomar. Now he's saying that it's ein kedusha chal. Now if you're going to ask me a shayla, he bevorns a shayla. Bevorn means that you basically know the shayla, you anticipate the shayla, and you answer the shayla before somebody has a chance to ask you the shayla. So if you're going to answer the shayla, if you're going to answer the shayla and say the following: Izo hi shivcha charufa. What's the designated shivcha? Zo shachatzi shivcha v'chatzi baschorin amiuras alevet ivri. Shivcha charufa is a case where she's half shivcha, half baschorin, and she's miuras alevet ivri. What do you see there? You could have a case where somebody's half free and half evet, and they can be engaged. What do you see there? Alma bas isru sehai. So therefore, you see over here that shivcha v'chatzi baschorin should be kiddusha kedushin. So why do I say ein kiddusha kedushin? V'shivcha. So amar lo, I'll say to him, kolcha etzel Rabbi Yishmael shu omer b'shivcha knas amiuras alevet ivri v'shivcha knas bas isru sahi. Rather, I'll say to him, no, that's similar when it says that a shivcha charusa is half shivcha, half baschorin can be miuras alevet ivri. It's the same thing as saying that a shivcha knanis can be miuras alevet ivri. It's not literal. Elamai yisachal meimar. My miureses miuchedes hachanami. My miureses miuchedes. The word miureses is just as Rashi says dibra lashon kebnei adam, dibra torah lashon bnei adam. It doesn't mean that they're actually engaged because in hachanami half shivcha, half free cannot become engaged, cannot do kedushin. And when it says that they're miureses, it just means that they're miuchedet. They're set aside for the time that they'll be able to get married. But Lamaisa, he says over here that just like the case over there where if you marry half a woman, Eina Mikudeshes, he holds that if you marry half free, half eved, Eina Mikudeshes as well. The fact that you did everything you could over here, too bad, he says, I don't hold to that svara. And therefore you have differing opinions as to whether the Mikudushin would be chal when you marry half free and half eved. Amar of Chisda, listen to this case, along these lines. Now these cases over here are going to assume that if you marry half free, half eved, the Kedushin will be chal. Because if not, then we'll see that there's nothing to talk about. So this is within the Mandi Amar now who holds half eved, half free. You marry the half free part, that Kedushin is chal, and now you're married to her. Or at least you're half married to her. Amar of Chisda. Chatze shivcha v'chatze baschorin sheniskacha l'reuvein v'nishtachara v'chazav v'niskacha l'shimon. So what happens? I'm half free, half shivcha. And, well, somebody's half free, half shivcha, and then they become niskadesh to Reuven. So what did we say? When you're half and half, you can be niskadesh to Reuven, so therefore, seemingly, the kedushin is chal. V'nishtachvara, and now she's freed. So what happens? So the question becomes, when she's freed, as we'll see in the Gemara, does she now become married to Reuven fully? Or does her marriage to Reuven that she had when she was half free, half eved, does that go out the drain and now she's a free woman? So what happens in this case? After she goes free, v'chazra v'niskacha l'shimon. Now again, somebody asked me this in the first DAF. When we're talking about here niskacha, it doesn't mean, it's not telling us the halacha, it's telling us what she did. She did a ma'aseh kedushin. The halacha we'll see whether she's mekadesh or not. But just because it says niskacha doesn't mean that halachically she was in Skadesh. That means that she went ahead and did a ma'aseh kedushin. So she did a ma'aseh kedushin with Reuven, and then she was freed and she did a ma'aseh kedushin with Shimon, Reuven's brother. Umesu shnehem. Reuven and Shimon die. So what does she do? Well, it depends. It says in Gemara, Misyavna leLevi. She does Yibum with Levi, the third brother. Why? Because in this case, she's not considered married to two brothers. Because again, if she was married to two people, which she's not allowed to be, but theoretically, if we would seemingly come up with a case where she's married to two people, as Rashi points out, there could be a case where you're married to two different brothers if one of them does mamar with you. That's a separate case, but there is a possibility. But in this case, since she, quote-unquote, did Kiddushin with Reuven, then she was freed, and then she did Kiddushin with Shimon, it's not considered as if she's married to two, and therefore she does Yibam with Levi. Why? Says the Gemara Manashach, because either way, she's only married to one of them. I Kiddushin de Reuven. It doesn't tell us what the halacha is, but it says I Kiddushin de Reuven Kiddushin de Shimon lav Kiddushin. So now we're saying, not like I said originally, we don't necessarily hold here that the Kiddushin is chal. He's saying, but either way, whether you hold that the Kiddushin is chal when she's half and half, or whether you hold it's not chal, either way she could do Yibam with Levi. Why? Because if you hold that when she does Kedushin and she's half and half, the Kedushin is chal, so then it was chal with Reuven. When she was nishtach, where seemingly nothing happened, and now when she does it with Shimon, it's not chal, because she's already niskadish to his brother. Now when both of them die, so now she could do Yibum with Levi, because she was only one. And if you say the other way, that when she did it with Reuven, it didn't work, because she was half and half, then she's freed, and then she's niskadish with Shimon, so now she's niskadish with Shimon. When Shimon and Reuven both die, l'maisa b'manashach, she could do it with Levi. Says the Gemara, manashach, I Kedushin, no, she doesn't, she can do chalitza, but she could also do Yibum. I Kedushay de Reuven Kedushin, Kedushay de Shimon lav Kedushin, Vi Kedushay de Shimon Kedushin, Kedushay de Reuven lav Kedushin. Fine. But now we're going to really have to discuss, and seemingly that's what the Gemara is going to do here. The Gemara is going to say this was a special case of Yibum. But Lamaisa, what's the story? If she's half and half, and she gets married to somebody, and then she's free, so is it Kedushin chal or not? Again, this is in the assumption that seemingly the Kedushin would be chal. The question is, what happens when she's free? Let's see. Says the Gemara, she does Kedushin with Reuven, and then she is freed. Now in this case, Shimon is not a brother of Reuven. Now she goes and does Kedushin with Shimon. Rav Yosef bar Chama Amar Rav Nachman Pako Kedushay Rishon. So there's two opinions what happens. When you do Kiddushin, again, these are both going within the opinion that the Kiddushin is chal. Because there else is nothing to talk about. If the first one wasn't chal, then when she's nishtachra, she's a free woman, that's it. So assuming that Kiddushin is chal now, the question is, what happens when she's freed? If the Kiddushin was chal when she was married to half and half, well again, you can only marry half of her, so you couldn't really be with her, but now the Kiddushin was chal to the half. Now the possibilities are what? Possibilities are when she's free, so the Kiddushin that you did with her, which only was making on half of her, now it's chal totally. Or the Kiddushin that you did with her, now that she's free, she becomes like a new person, as Rashi says, like a ger. And when a ger comes, it's like a new person, and therefore the Kiddushin you did with her is worthless. So does the Kiddushin automatically chal now? Or is she a brand new person, and now the Kiddushin is as if she was never married to you at all? Says the Gemara. Rav Nachman says, Paku Kedushay Rishon. She's a new person, and the fact that she was married to Reuven is worthless now, and now she's considered to be married to Shimon. Rav Zera Amar Rav Nachman, Gomru Kedushay Rishon. No. That the first Kedushin, which was only half of Kedushin, when she's free, now it becomes a full Kedushin. Now she's fully Mekadesh to Reuven, and what she did with Shimon is worthless. Amar Rav Zera. So Rav Zera, who says that the first Kedushin now finalizes and goes through, Kavase Didi Mistabra Dichsiv. He brings the proof for himself that it makes sense that the first Kedushin would be totally chal after she is released, after she is freed. It says over there by somebody writes the pasuk, if she's a shifcha necharefes, if you're with a woman who's half free and half slave, then you don't get misa. You only get misa if you're with a regular Eishes Ish. But what does it say? The pasuk says, lo yumsu, you don't die kilo chusha, because she's not freed. What does that imply? He says, ha chufsha yumsu. That implies that as soon as she's freed, you're going to get misa. Why? Because she becomes automatically mekudash. Obviously, the answer to that question is going to be, the other side is going to say, no, that's not what it means. It means that when she's freed, if she then goes ahead and gets remarried, then you get misa, but it's not an automatic thing. That's what the other side will say. No. What it means is not that it automatically happens, and that's a machlokes. If you say that the first marriage that was half and half, now it automatically goes and it's chal on the entire woman as soon as it happens, so that's what the pasuk is saying, that as soon as you're with her, you don't have to do anything. She doesn't have to get remarried to Reuven. She's married to him from the beginning now. She's totally married to him. If you're with her now, then you get misa. And the other opinion which will say that her marriage to Reuven is totally gone. It means that when she's freed, you'll get misa. No, you don't get misa right away, because if you would be with her as soon as she's freed, and echanami, she's a pnuya. But if she gets remarried, if she does kedushin again after she's freed, and then you're with her, then yumsu, then you will die. Says the Gemara. Amar Afuna bar Katina Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Maise be'isha achas. Shechatzia shivcha v'chatzia baschorin v'kafu es rabba v'asa baschorin keman. So the question is, in general, we know that we've been talking until now that if you have a man who's half free and half slave, so the one who's half slave, the owner needs to free him. The question is, does that apply to a woman as well? That means by a man we said it applies because seemingly what? He needs to go ahead and he needs to have the mitzvah of pru'avu. So Gemara, for all intents and purposes, is asking now, is there a mitzvah for a woman, or is it that she's half and half, so there's no mitzvah to free her because the Rabbi says she's not chayiv in pru'avu anyway? Says the Gemara, Rafuna bar Katina Rabbi says what? Kiman, ki Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka de Amar, al shneim u'omer vayivarach tamlim vayomer pru'avu milu. That the commandment was for men and women together, and therefore since she's commanded in pru'avu, you need to free her. Amar of Menachem by Yitzchak lo. He says no, you need to free the woman too, but for a different reason. Minag hefker naguba, because when you have a half woman who's half free and half eved, so you're not really chayav misa, as we said, for being with her, you're chayav malchus, and therefore, lamaisa, what happened? Everybody's going to go ahead and be mizana with her, because if you got to be mizana with somebody, it's better to be mizana with somebody that's not going to make you chayav misa. So, at the end of the day, that's a different reason, but either way, whether it's because she's chayav in puravu, or whether it's because everyone's going to be mizana with her, lamaisa, even when you have a half free, half eved woman, you need to free her as well. Zok the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says that if you sell your eved to an oved kochavim, or you sell it to somebody in Chutz La'aretz, then they go free. You're not allowed to sell your eved to an oved kochavim, because when they're your eved, so even though they're not chayiv in all the mitzvos, they're not chayiv in mitzvos seishas mangrama like a woman, but they're still chayiv and they still have the ability and they have the potential to do mitzvos. They could wear yarmulke, they could eat kosher, they could keep Shabbos, they could do all these things. Lamaisa, once you sell them to an oved kochavim, they can't do any of that stuff. So the rabbis penalize you that as soon as you sell the eved to an oved kochavim, seemingly, as we'll see, seemingly even before the oved kochavim even takes possession, or maybe not, but again it says in Rashi clearly that if you would run away from the oved kochavim, he doesn't come back to you. Once you free him, they penalize you and he's no longer your eved. Or if you sell them to somebody in Chutz La'aretz, so then Yatzal Cher. So if somebody asks, why would you be selling him to Novei Kochavim? So you're desperate. L'maisa, you have no money, so you're doing something wrong because you need the money. Sell him to Novei Kochavim, but at the end of the day, he goes free automatically, and halachically he's free as soon as you sell him to Novei Kochavim. Halachically he's free as soon as you sell him to somebody in Chutz La'aretz. Seemingly, Rashi doesn't explain, but seemingly because he can't do the same mitzvahs that he can do in Eretz Yisrael. Tana Rabbanan, Hamocher Abdul Ovdei Kochavim Yatzal Cher V'tzarich Get Shichmer Rabba Rishon. Problem is that when you sell an evet to an oved kochavim, so the rabbi said he goes free, but he still needs to get shechur. So if he gets sold to the oved kochavim tell him, if we tell the oved kochavim, oh, you might say, halachically he's free, they're going to say, I don't care about halacha. So they're going to work him. Let's say he runs away from the oved kochavim now. So we said halachically he doesn't come back to you, he's free. The rabbis penalize you for selling him to oved kochavim. But says the Gemara, he still needs to get shechur if he wants to marry a Jew. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, b'medvar mimshalo katzalav ono. That's only if, again, you didn't do it intentionally, you didn't do it with the bad intention, seemingly, when you sold him to Oved Kochavim. So if he didn't give him any star when you sold him, then he doesn't go free. He needs to have a get shechur. Aval katsav alav ono zehu shechruro. If you write for him a receipt, that's a shechur. My ono, what's the receipt? Amar v'sheish the chasav lehachi lechashetibrach mimenu ainli esek bacha. So again, the guy feels bad. He needs money, so he's going to sell you to Oved Kochavim. He's going to do something wrong, but he knows that the rabbis penalize him, and now he can never get you back. So what happens? Lamaisa, he writes you a note so that this way you won't have to worry about a get shechur. And he says, at the end of the day, I'm selling you to Oved Kochavim. Hopefully you'll run away from him. And when you run away from him, here's a piece of paper that says you're no longer in my possession. It's considered to be a get shechur. And Lamaisa, now the guy, when he runs away, can get married to anybody he wants. Tana Rabbanan. So we said that we penalize you if you sell your eved to an Oved Kochavim and the eved goes free. The question is, lo ve'alav mina Oved Kochavim. So at what point does the eved go free? So if I sell you to an oved kochavim and then the oved kochavim buys you, so whatever, as soon as the oved kochavim seemingly takes possession of you, then you would go free. What happens if I use you as a collateral for an oved kochavim? I want to borrow money from a non-Jew, and I use my eved as a collateral. So does the eved automatically go free just by definition that I used it as a collateral? Or does the eved not go free until I don't pay my loan, and now the oved kochavim officially, quote-unquote, takes possession? So says the Gemara, Lo ve'alav mina oved kochavim, kevan she'asala oved kochavim nimuso yatsa lecheres. So as soon as the oved kochavim makes for him a nimuso, he goes free. What's a nimuso? My nimuso. Amar Yehuda bar Yehuda nashki. As soon as he makes him some type of necklace, as soon as he takes the necklace and puts it onto the eved, your eved, and says basically the necklace, he doesn't own the eved yet because again he's only collateral, but the necklace basically says soon to be mine. Soon to be mine. If he puts on the necklace that's soon to be mine, so even though he hasn't yet collected him and he's only a collateral, Lamais, it's as if he became the Oved Kochavim and now he goes free. Says the Gemara, Masav Sheshet, it can't be that he puts some type of sign on him, and that automatically makes him into the Ovdei Kochavim, so the purposes of going free. Because we know ha'arisin, if you have a sharecropper, which means I'll work your field and I'll get a third, a quarter, or half of the stuff. V'hachakirus, or if you have a tenant farming arrangement where you give me a certain amount of produce every single year, and I work your field for you, as opposed to a percentage. V'harisei batei avos, or if I'm a sharecropper and I actually inherited because my parents worked for your parents and your parents worked for the grandparents, all of those cases for Ovei Kochavim shemashkan sadeu liYisrael. Or the opposite case, where an Ovei Kochavim borrows money from me and makes his field into a mashkon. He makes his field into a collateral. So I can seemingly use his field. In the meantime, maybe not, but it's a collateral. So even if I, the Jew, make a nimuso, make a sign on the Ovei Kochavim's field, lemaisa, I'm still pater from maisa for anything that I get. What do we see here? We see that even if you make a sign, it still belongs to the original owner. Since it belongs to an Ovei Kochavim, lemaisa, it's not mine. If I take fruits of it, I don't have to pay maiser. So why in this case, where if the Ovei Kochavim makes a sign on my Eved, which is collateral, which is not yet his, why in that case is he considered like he already was transferred to Ovei Kochavim and then he goes free? Says the Gemara, it must mean that nimuso doesn't mean making a sign. Rather, is it possible that you make a sign by a sada? Sounds like you don't make a sign by a sada. And seemingly, again, it seems to be contradictory. Ella, Amr Shesha Zman. No. When it says that he made him an emuso, it means Zman. What does it mean he made him a Zman? That if I made a thing that says, if I don't pay you by X, Y, Z, if I don't pay you by February 1st, then my Eved becomes your property. So in that case, the Eved goes free right away. Says the Gemara, though, kashya zman azman. So why don't you say the same thing by a sada? So then if I say that if the Ovei Kochavim says to me that if I don't give you back the money by February 1st, then the sada becomes yours. So why, when February 1st comes, seemingly, does the sada still not become mine? Says the Gemara, lo kashya. Had de mata zamne, had de lo mata zamne. No, here's the din. Here's what's happening. In the case of the Eved, and in the case of the Sada, we made deals that by February 1st, the Sada becomes mine, because again, I, the Jew, lent you money, the non-Jew. Or in the case of the Eved, when I borrowed money from you, so the Eved becomes yours on February 1st. So what happens? What's the case? So he's saying, no, the case is very obvious. The case is that when February 1st comes, so the case of the Eved, which is saying that now the Eved goes free, that's when February 1st comes. As soon as February 1st comes, and I haven't paid you back the money yet, so Lamaisa, the Eved, which is collateral, becomes yours, and now the Eved goes free. The case of the Sada, which says that I don't have to pay Trumas, and I don't have to take off Maisa for any fruit that I get from you, that's before February 1st. That's when I'm allowed to eat, for whatever reason, I'm allowed to eat the fruit that's the collateral. So before the actual loan is due, so Lamaisa, that's what it's talking about. But Einachanami, if February 1st would come, then in that case as well, the field would become mine. And Einachanami, I would have to take off my source on the thing. Says the Gemara, Elagabe Eved Demata Zimne Tzricha Lameimar. The Gemara says that can't be the case because it's obvious. What do you tell me that when February 1st comes, so then the Eved goes free? It's obvious that when February 1st comes, the Eved goes free. He becomes the property of the Ovdei Kochavim. We just said if you sell your Eved to an Ovdei Kochavim, then he goes free. Says the Gemara, Ela Aidi ve'Aidi de lo mata zimne. Both of the cases where I borrow money from the non-Jew, or when I lend money to the non-Jew, when I lend money to the non-Jew, it's a case where his field becomes my collateral, and when I borrow money from the non-Jew, it's a case where my Eved becomes collateral for him. Both of them are talking about cases where the time to pay hasn't yet come. The time to pay hasn't yet come, so then why does the Eved go free? Lamaisa, the time to pay hasn't yet come, so then the Eved shouldn't go free because Lamaisa, he's still collateral. Says in Gemara, no, velo kashya, hal legufa v'hal lepeira. No, says in Gemara that. Look at the Rashi, the last Rashi on the page. Gabe Eved dekava bozman leploni legufo. That basically the deal was different. It's not what I thought. We thought originally the deal was that if you don't pay me back, I get your sada. If I don't pay you back, you get my Eved. That's not the deal. The deal is that if I don't pay you back, you get my Eved. But the deal is that if you don't pay me back, I don't get your sada. I then get to eat all of the payros on your sada. Says the Gemara. Says Rashi. Gabe Eved dekava bozman legufo. Shim lo yitin lo ad otos man yehegufo chalu lo v'kochavu me'ach shavai mishtabed bo v'chevan dezil zel b'tekanter banan da'asulim korev lo v'chavim kansu v'avagav lo matazini. Again, we're talking about before February 1st. So if it's before February 1st and I made a collateral that when February 1st comes you'll get to take my Eved, says Rashi, says the Gemara, we're going to give you the knas now. That even before February 1st, since you even entered into this arrangement where your Eved has the potential to become that of an Ovei Kochavim, we're going to give you the knas even before February 1st and he goes free right now as soon as you made him a collateral. Which is interesting because Lamaisa, the collateral is going to be worthless because now he's going to be free and now he's going to run away because he hasn't been taken by the Ovei Kochavim yet. But by a Sadeh, where we made a time for February 1st for the payros. It's not that when February 1st comes and you don't pay me back the loan, now I get to go ahead and I get to cake your sadeh. It's that I get to go ahead and I get to eat your payros. So in that case, I can't eat the payros now. If you don't pay me on February 1st, now I get to start eating payros. That's what it's saying. When the time comes, even when February 1st comes, Lamaisa, since the arrangement was not that I get your field, I can't eat the payros before February 1st. So you might think that when February 1st comes, now I need to give Maisa. I don't have to give Maisa, because even when February 1st comes, I haven't acquired the field, I've acquired the right to eat payros, and since I only acquired the right to eat payros, it's not my payros, it's your payros, but I have the right to eat it till you pay me back. Lamaisa, in that case, I don't have to take off Meiser, because it's really the fruits of an Ovei Kochavim. That's what the Gemara says, and that's the difference between the two cases. And finally, the Ibayis Ema, or another answer as to the difference between the case of an Eved, in the case where I make my Eved a collateral so he goes free, or in the case where you make your Sadeh into collateral and I don't have to take off Meiser. The Ibayis Ema, B'shelo ve'al menat le'mishkeno ve'lo mishkeno. Says Rashi, Had dis Sadeh, the case of Sadeh, is kagon shelo ve'ovei kochavim Yisrael amanachim lo efra lizman ploni bo mishkani mekarkazu v'tehei shalcha. So the case is that, again, the way that we're explaining, that you borrow money from me, you're a non-Jew, and you borrow money from me, so we make the din that if you don't pay me back, then I'm going to be able to take your field. And we even made, he's saying, even if we make a time, February, if we make no time, so for sure it doesn't belong to me. But let's say we say, if you don't pay me back by February 1st, I get your field. So then what would the din be here? So you would think when February 1st comes, again, this is not like the first answer, this is assuming that I even get the field on February 1st. So when February 1st comes, you might think that I get the field. So then why, if I start eating payros after February 1st, do I not have to pay Meiser? Says the Gemara, because it's Almenat leMishkano v'lo Mishkano. The case over here where you don't take off Meiser is when I haven't actually taken it to my possession yet. That means if I just eat the payros without taking the field to my possession, it's still considered to be your field. Of course, when February 1st comes and you default on the loan, I can actually go ahead and take the field and acquire it for myself. But if I've chosen not to do that for whatever reason, and I just go to take the payros, so Lamaisa I still don't have to pay Meiser on those payros. V'gabe Eved, but the case of an Eved, which is the case where what? You borrowed money from me, or I borrowed money from you as a Jew, and I made my Eved into a collateral, and we said over there that the Eved goes free, so when is that? So he learns over here that the case is by the Eved that we said until February 1st. Before February 1st, you're right, the Eved doesn't go free according to this answer. But when February 1st comes, and I haven't yet paid back the din, I haven't paid back the loan, the Eved goes free, even though Lemaisa, you have not taken possession of the Eved yet. Once the time has come, February 1st, and I've defaulted on my loan, he becomes yours to an extent, enough of an extent, where I did something wrong, and the rabbis gave me a knas, and the Eved goes free. Shkoyach, everyone.